basically what we do. Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, I cannot wait for this conversation because we tried this once before. Blair and I tried this and we are having some difficulties. So I'm excited about this because for our last conversation, the things that he was saying was so powerful. And so I'm excited for you, the audience, and for me as well. Blair, I want to thank you for coming to Threads of Enlightenment because I know that you're coming with a couple of things that I deem important and valuable is your time. And thank you so much for coming and sharing that valuable commodity. The other is your journey because it housed who you are and made you who you are. It housed who you were, but it made you who you are today. And thank you for coming and enlightening us. Just giving us some of those threads so that we can all grow and become better human spirits. Thank you for coming to Threads.
I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, sir. Tell them what you have given birth so far as a result of your journey. And I tell people the journey is there to introduce ourselves to us, number one, and to make us pregnant to deliver things. Talk to them about those things that you have given birth to so far, because I know that will change as you continue to grow and evolve.
You bet. Well, I'm an author, YouTuber. I like to call myself an ordinary mystic, a seeker and discoverer of spirit. I've written 5, now 6 books on the subject of meditation, mindfulness, manifestation, law of prosperity, law of attraction, and this journey as an author is not something that I really planned for. It's the right-hand turn that I ended up taking about 6 years ago from the path that I was on. I had taken a sizable promotion to move from the East Coast to the West Coast in San Diego with an organization that was focused on consulting with businesses and small business administration, provided our funds. Assistant State Director in California for this program, only to find that my boss, for the first time ever, was terrible, really psychopathic,
Wow.
running the program into the ground, abusing employees, misappropriating funds. And after a year, I just couldn't take it anymore. I mean, I couldn't let her do what she was doing, especially with my fellow employees. I mean, it was just terrible what was going on. So I did a whistleblowing, if you will. I went to the people who were supposed to be watching over the program and not doing a very good job of that, and let them know what was going on. And investigation was done. She was fired, but they fired me too. They said I was a troublemaker, which often happens, as it turns out, for people who do whistleblowing activity.
Yeah.
Because it exposed them.
Yes.
And in response, I was just devastated. I mean, it was the 25-year career. I was my job. My ego was out to here about being a leader and a manager and all of that. And it was just a devastating blow. And in response, what I did was to take a deep dive into my meditation practice. I'd started doing yoga about 45 years ago when I first moved to the Bay Area, and meditation, and really as therapy. I began to write, journal, and writing down my my thoughts, and my experiences and so forth. And found myself, interestingly enough, in an unexpected way, making soul contact with my higher consciousness.
Wow.
So I've become a firm believer that we are all eternal beings. We're eternal beings occupying very complicated biomechanical vehicles with
Yeah.
an onboard computer that's constantly chattering in our ears about the
Yeah.
past and the future and worrying about survival. Um, and began to realize that there was a whole different world out there.
Yeah.
Uh, in here,
Yep.
that was soul based. That was my literally that part of myself that had been waiting for the whole lifetime really
Yeah.
for me to wake up to it and to allow it into my life. Um, so as a result of that, I wrote. Sometimes I would sit and write. I'd write for an hour, and it would be
Mm.
like spirit was just flowing through me onto the keyboard and onto the screen. Sometimes I wouldn't even remember what I would go back and look and wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting. Um, and, and decided after about 100,000, 150,000 words that I had something of value that I could
Yeah.
share with others. And that was the impetus really for the books that I've written, the the articles that I've written, the podcasts that I've participated in. Um, it's really the outgrowth of that experience of illumination is how
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would term it. Um, and here we are today.
Yeah, I call it Blair, the day of visitation. I think we mentioned in the onset that we live in a state of automatic um, existence, if you will, most of us.
Yes,
And until we have a day of visitation, I call it that day when our world began to crumble and it's upside down. And that comes in different formats, diseases, loss of job, broken relationship, whatever, however it comes. But I
yes,
think it comes to, as you said, introduce us to that soul that has been sitting there waiting to have this conversation.
yes,
And once we are in that space, that's the space I call enlightenment. And to me, enlightenment means that you and I have an opportunity to become better students of ourselves. As we
yes,
become the perpetual investigator is another terminology that I use when talking about beginning that journey, because we begin to ask ourselves, how did I get here? What, why is this? There are things happening inside. I need to look in to find. And that's the beginning of the journey. It's in a beautiful space to be, challenging because we're going to talk about those challenges that come up as you
yes,
begin to figure out ways to manage yourself. But you had a couple of tools that um, you were familiar with. The first was meditation, and we're going to go back into that. And the other is journaling, that declaring. I think when we do things like that, we release all those things that were sitting inside of us, which gives opportunity, like you said, when we get into that flow, that information comes so naturally because we have actually released all those things that were there, and we were able to get the new information. And sometimes I know exactly what you mean. When you finish writing, you look back and you go, I wrote that?
yes,
I don't know how that happened. And so
right.
you are downloading the new stuff. So I want to go back there as to what we do here is to revisit your life. Talk to us as to your childhood, because I believe that's the place where we start getting our programming from our family, society, religion, all the other entities outside are trying to program you and I to say, this is how you ought to think, behave, and all of those things. Talk to us about your family, your first place of residence, if you will, being with your family. We then usher going into school and all the other location by which we reside. So talk to us about your
Sure.
family situation.
Okay. Sure. Well, I grew up in the um, rural South
Mm-hmm.
in North Carolina. My father was an architect, my mother a nurse, and ultimately an administrator. Um, and fairly quote normal family for the 50s,
Yeah.
um, a loving family, brothers, a sister. But like you say, from the very beginning, I feel like I was programmed, if you will, or hypnotized is the word that I
Yes.
like to use,
Yeah.
hypnotized by the culture,
Hmm.
by the culture of my family, by the culture of my community, by the culture of being a human on planet Earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I like to refer that to that as three-dimensional reality.
Yeah.
Um, we get born into three-dimensional reality. We're programmed from the beginning uh, to um, to be a human being, to be a, depending on all sorts of things, um, uh, what would be considered normal in some
Yeah.
fashion. And there's not a whole lot of alternative thinking. So I grew up in the Lutheran Church, um, and um, that was an influence.
Yeah.
But my parents, my teachers, my spiritual leaders, none knew anything about five-dimensional reality. None knew
Yeah.
anything about spirit.
Hmm.
None knew anything about the kingdom of heaven within, uh,
Yeah.
as Jesus called it. Um, I never heard a sermon on that subject
Yeah.
because my spiritual leaders didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
weren't about to talk about that. I mean, it was uh, in some ways sad, but it's not that long since we were cave people. It's not
Yeah.
that long since we were fairly um, indoctrinated into survival with these puny little bodies and against uh, you know uh, fangs and teeth and so forth. And so
Yeah.
from the very beginning, uh, we've been afraid,
Yeah.
scared, and like I said, indoctrinated.
Yeah.
So that awakening that I had really was about opening up to fifth dimensional reality.
Well,
My
how
first
old were you,
experience,
Blair, when, as you said, the awakening began in
yes,
you? How old were you when you began to see that there is or understand, if you will, there is
right,
something else?
yeah. I was 22, and
Hmm.
I'd moved from North Carolina to San Francisco. My first opening, if you will, was
Yeah.
a Jungian dream workshop at
Hmm.
the Jewish Community Center in San Francisco. And that was exploring dreams in a Jungian sort of way.
Yeah.
And Jung was very much a mystic, um, was the very beginning of that. And then I started doing some exploration of yoga and meditation and doing self help programs to begin to explore that other reality.
Yeah.
Is and really since then I've been on that path of waking up.
Yeah.
But the waking up process was slow in a way. I mean, if I look back on it, it was quite slow. And it really wasn't until I had this experience of illumination that I mentioned that that the bubble burst, and
Yeah.
that I really opened up. But in the meantime, I was doing the best I could to survive and thrive in a three-dimensional world,
Yeah.
um, with all of the with all of the trappings that go with that three-dimensional world.
The little awakenings, because you are correct. It takes, because we've been programmed from even within the womb,
Within
the
the womb, that's
programming
correct.
starts, and so it takes us some time to begin to allow the awakening to manifest in its fullness to the point where it's able to usher us seriously into that journey. So tell me
Right.
about some of those
Into that
things.
state of grace that, yeah, yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
yes. Tell me about some of those things that you started to notice on your first entrance into it. Were
Yes.
some of those things that you began to notice, and how did you begin to interpret it as you are beginning to slowly um, your eye beginning to open up, your understanding.
Hmm.
They say
Hmm.
the eye of the understanding is opening up. What were some of those things that you started to notice?
Right. Um, well, like I said, I really I started with meditation
Hmm.
in yoga, and that really meditation, in my
Yeah,
opinion, is the
yeah,
shortest path to enlightenment.
I agree.
It's the shortest path to illumination. All traditions have some sort of meditative process or
Yeah,
tradition that is built around their teachers' teachings.
yes,
All of our master teachers talk about meditation or going within, the kingdom of heaven. Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, Lao Tzu, all of our master teachers taught
yeah,
the same thing about going within. So the meditation process began for me with uh, a downtown ashram in San Francisco, where we would go up to the third floor and do our
hmm,
yoga class and our meditation. And there were the ancient books from India and the Hindu
the
religions, and
Vedas.
I
Yeah,
would look into that.
yeah,
I get there early and start peeking into
uh,
that. Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, wow. Whoa. So there was something totally different from
yeah,
that the Christian um, tradition that I grew
yeah,
up in, and that was really like I said, that was a beginning, and I began to see that there was a whole different world out there, and that by going within, I could find more who I am. I
yeah,
could more
yeah,
find myself, um,
yeah,
and so it was a gradual process. There was a program called the Earhart Seminar Training Program that a lot of people in the United States were involved with. It was just a training program, a couple of weekends. Um,
yeah,
but it really gave people a whole different perspective on um, how the world worked, how the brain worked, how to be effective in the world,
mhm,
how to see things from a different perspective. So it's been. Then I started doing Zen meditation, which is a
yeah,
different kind of meditation than
yep,
yoga meditation. Um, Started going to the Zen Center, which is over the hill from where I lived, um, and those folks were really interesting. Um, Zen is a different way of looking at meditation and doing meditation. Um,
yeah,
so it's really been a gradual progression, a gradual growing, a gradual opening up, and um, um, and exploration. But it really wasn't until I ended up in San Diego that things changed dramatically, and that, like I said, I had soul contact. Um, um, I affectionately called my higher consciousness High C, and this is an
yeah,
ongoing relationship. It's a daily
yes,
conversation. That still small voice that is spoken
yes,
of. It's a daily conversation. Um, I have a process that I call best possible outcomes, and best possible
hmm,
outcomes is a process where I ask for the best possible outcome related to something.
yeah,
In the case of our conversation, this interview, the best possible outcome for this interview.
yeah,
Um, Pause and then thank spirit
hmm,
that I'm turning the best possible outcome over to
yeah,
for uh, uh, um, the best possible outcome. And then I thank
Yeah.
Spirit for its involvement in my life. So that
Yes.
simple process of turning over the outcome to my higher self that knows
Yeah.
much better than I know in my human brain
Yeah.
um, what's best for me in terms of my growth and evolution is where I turn to for
Yeah.
inspiration, but also for, I mean, it sort of clears the path for me, if you will. It goes out
Yeah.
and makes the crooked places straight. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing when you sort of turn your human life over to your higher consciousness and to that um, spirit part of yourself that things begin to happen which are amazing. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just a daily unfolding and unfolding and unfolding.
It is in the Christian faith, they call it the walk of faith. In
Yes,
other sects, they talk about having the, that conversation, the asking, the releasing, and because you're coming and you're actually turning it over to getting it out of you. You're asking, having that conversation. This is my request. This is what and I'm releasing it to you to
yes,
bring that manifestation to pass. And as we for lack of a better word, you walk by faith. You're turning over this your assignment, your request over. You are
right,
releasing it, and the manifestation takes place. And people
right.
don't
And the first,
understand it's
yeah,
that simple. It
yeah,
really is,
yeah,
and
it
they
is. Oh, I know it
complicate
is.
it with
And the faith is that first willingness to
yes,
do it, but
yes,
then comes the proof.
yes,
You know, it's not just being uh, faithful that something will happen.
yeah,
Things begin to happen
yeah,
in ways that are um, that reinforce that
hmm,
this is the path to follow.
yeah,
This is the direction to go in. This is what will manifest, attract to
yeah,
you the people, circumstances, conditions, things that you need as you need them uh,
yes.
in order to live a quality life.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'll give an example, Blair, of something that happened to me personally. I usually take this is years ago. I usually take like certain topics and I'll study it within the Bible because I grew up in the church, and I took the
Yes,
topic of faith, and I was studying that for about almost a year or so. And one day, on my way to work, I forgot my wallet and went to work. Coming back, heading home, I looked up and realized that my I had no gas, and I'm walk with me for a second. So I'm
sure,
pulling up to this gas station. I lift my head up and look. After looking at my gauge, I see the gas station, and I said I need help in my car getting to there because it started moving slow. All of a sudden, Blair, it picks up a little. I make my right into the gas station. As I'm doing that, I'm watching this other man coming from the other side of the gas station, coming in with his car, smoke coming out of his car. The engine is overheated for some reason. I pulled in, he pulled in. He stopped, I stopped, and I'm looking at him. I stepped out of my car to grab my phone, and I heard the man talking about how he he needs a ride to get to work, and because he was not to work, to this appointment, an
yes,
interview. And I'm standing there after studying this topic of faith for 1 year. I'm looking at him, and I knew what was supposed to happen. But do you know what I did? I was afraid of. going to him and saying to him, "Hey, I will take you. I need gas. If you can give me some gas, I will take you to that. I will wait for you so that you
Yes.
can come back and stuff like that." Because, I could have
Right.
gained a good friend. This was my opportunity to
Yes.
learn the simplicity of faith, and I allow fear to rob me of that moment. And so um, it's a simple thing. People
Yes.
complicate it. We complicate it with fear, unbelief, and all of those things, and it unhooks us from the benefits that we would receive as we just release it and trust, as you
Right.
say,
Yeah.
um, and walk by faith. And that was my lesson, and I failed it, but I recognized what happened,
Yes.
and it was a momentous teaching for me
Yeah.
that
Great
I've
teacher moment.
always
Yeah.
paid attention.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's simple, man. People,
Yeah.
that was, I saw it. It was my opportunity to get what I call, I studied the lab for 1 year. We were in the lab, but here it was my opportunity for the practical stuff now to
Yes.
be put in place, and I failed.
Right.
Um, and so, yeah, it's that's why when anyone that is listening to us, it's that simple. Trust, listen to us. It's that simple. You just
Yeah.
have to learn how to release it, and
Yeah.
once you release it, don't look to try to pick it back up, because that's when you come out of your state of faith, and you can miss it because your energy shifts from one of expectation to one of worry and concern, and you'll
Right.
miss it all.
Yeah. 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 It to my way of thinking, law of attraction is about vibration,
Yes. Yep.
and higher vibration attracts higher states of awareness
Yep.
and attracts higher quality of life. Lower
Yeah.
vibration attracts lower vibrational experiences.
Exactly. So talk to us, Blair, about this awakening. When you had that visitation, you talked about the ego, you had the big ego and so forth. When you began that painful time,
Yes.
and you went back to something familiar, meaning the meditation piece. When you got there and you began to appropriate also the writing and the journals, what began to happen to you as an individual with this combination being practice, if you will, on a daily basis? What changes began to happen within the kingdom that is within you?
Right. Um, well, first, there was a lot of fear for me about losing my job and my
Yeah,
income and my status and
yeah,
all of that. So
mm,
um, the fear began to subside.
mm-hmm,
The concern began to subside. I realized I'm going to be okay. I've got
yeah,
resources. I've got capabilities. My son invited me to come back to the San Francisco area from San Diego to help
mm-hmm,
him work on his house. And I'd done a lot of remodeling. So that gave
mm-hmm,
me an opportunity to return to the Bay Area where I had been for about 20 years after going back to North Carolina and back to California. Um, and it was a opportunity to do something for him,
yeah,
help him with his new house. So that was that got me back to the Bay Area, which I
yeah,
love. It got me closer to my son, who I love, and his family,
yeah,
um, and gave me something to do for a while.
yeah,
As I began to write more and more, and realizing that, as I said, I had some ideas, thoughts that I wanted to share. And so I began to
mm-hmm,
assemble that into books.
yeah,
Um, and learn all that you need to learn if you're going to be a self-published author with Amazon Books,
Yeah.
the learning curve is steep,
Hmm.
but it's really fun. At least I
Yeah.
found it fun to
Yeah.
explore all of that, and to continue to do some business consulting on the side to generate some additional income. But basically, I became semi-retired. Um,
Hmm.
Found a fabulous house about 20 miles from where my son lives. Um, just one of those. I mean, you think happenstance. No, it's not happenstance.
Yeah.
It's meant to be. We'd look for a house to
Yes.
buy. We'd look for a house to buy. We couldn't buy a house. We made offers. People came in with cash, and for 6 months, almost a year, we weren't able. And then we stumbled across this house that was kind of in a way, well, it was run down because the fella had um, ultimately died here and hadn't been able to take it. Turned out it was on a nice little hill,
Yeah.
nice view, uh, great bones. I could see
Hmm.
that when I walked into the house um, right off because of my experience in doing remodeling. The
Yeah.
real estate agent said, "You must be crazy. You don't want to buy this house." I said, "Yes, I do." So we made an offer. It turned out he was sitting right next to the real estate agent when we made the offer, um, uh, who turned out to be a friend. And our offer was accepted as a result of that relationship instead of the other offer that had come in for the house.
Yeah.
And the
Wow.
next thing you knew, no, we had a house. I had a project to work on. Um, and it's turned out to be, really a beautiful sanctuary.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's those sorts of things which, by just getting into the flow of
Yeah.
spirit, that begin to happen. That
Hmm.
things that you don't expect, things that are better than you expect,
Yeah. Yeah.
things that are in a way eye opening. And so it's been an eye opening process.
Yeah. 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 So as you said, eye opening. Talk to me about some of those discoveries that you started to notice, witness within yourself that you needed to deal with, because you mentioned that the fearfulness began to subside when you began to. I told people sometimes you need to put aside the emotion and allow the logic to walk you through processes, and before you know it, you'll see yourself going, "Why am I acting this way?" What were some of those discoveries that you were begin to unearth, um, the programmings that
Yes,
were you noticed that you needed to make some modifications, if you will, so
right.
as you began to learn and grow about who you are?
Um, when you use the right term, and that is process.
Mhm.
Um, it is an unfolding process.
Yeah.
If you're so wedded to one way of being and acting and doing, and exposed to another way of acting, being, doing, and growing and
Yeah.
evolving, um, there's lots of tugs and pulls. There were lots of times that I sort of felt like I I was between two worlds.
Yeah.
I would get pulled back into being concerned, being worried, being upset about my circumstance, and then I would release into trust.
Yeah.
Um, and it was really that soul contact that was the key,
Mhm.
coming to realize that there's a as an eternal being,
Yeah.
I came to planet Earth to learn and to grow. And I had to agree to forget who I was as an eternal being in order to incarnate as a human being. So a lot of it was just unwinding all that human beingness that wants to um, worry about the future and cogitate on the past and uh, and transcend the mind's desire to be in charge instead of letting spirit be in charge.
Yeah.
Because the mind, for a long, my mind just didn't want to give up for a long time. Wanted to stay in charge. It was worried, that I was going off the rails someplace, and that I was headed in the wrong direction, and this was not good for me, and it's not good for us, and so. But the meditation process that I ultimately developed, called higher consciousness meditation, really enabled me to put all that mind stuff aside and go straight to illumination. A lot of meditation practices revolve around training the mind to be quiet. Well, the mind doesn't want to be quiet. It wants to be in charge. It wants to chatter. It doesn't like the silence. So that was, there was a lot of tugging and pulling there. But as a result of developing the higher consciousness meditation process, it takes you beyond all the mind chatter. You don't have to train that wild horse. What you need to do is just turn the unfolding over to a higher power or to higher consciousness. And gradually that mind stuff just begins to fade away. And all those concerns just begin to fade away. It's like bringing light to darkness. The darkness just recedes and the light shines, and you find out that that's what you can trust is the light within you. So trust, is a big issue. Trusting yourself, your higher self, trusting in your soul's having your best interest at heart and really wanting to be your partner in life, so as to move forward into that which you were intended, if you wake up, to be. And so I think all of us have that available to us.
Yes.
And everybody has their own path. Some of my books and processes and tools really are a path, but any path that works for you is the one that you want to follow and to explore, and to realize that every path has a mystic element to it.
Yes.
That's your opportunity.
Yes.
To transcend.
Yes, I agree. I think, Blair, I look at it this way. I think that the principles, when you study the Vedas and the I Ching and all the other older manuscripts before the Bible and all the other things, you find that the principles are all the same. They transcend religion.
Yes. Yeah.
And I believe that all the billions of people on this planet are going to look at this masterpiece, this piece right there, go through it and try things on and come out on the other side with a beautiful new interpretation of those principles that are meaningful to them, that adds to the whole picture. And so I think each one of us is coming out with more information or that can help, and we have this thread. That's why I call it threads of enlightenment. We just have this fabric being weaved, as everyone passed through the um, the washing, I guess, if you will, of
Yes.
that journey with all of the information that we personalize, how we fit it to our being, and come
Right.
out with that information, and we were able to produce additional tools like books, podcasts, all
Yeah.
these other things. I think
And you talk
it's
about it
that
as
rich.
being creators. I mean, that's really
Yeah,
what
I
we're
think it's
saying
that
is,
rich, and that's why
yeah,
I
yeah,
love it that when people are see the value of their journey, because I think it's rich, it's beautiful stuff, because they're going to
yes.
bring something that I need to learn as a result.
And I think we all bring, talents,
Yeah.
abilities. Um, um, I mean, I believe in reincarnation. I think we bring forward that which we have
Yeah.
woven previously, bring
Hmm.
it forward, um, and have yet another opportunity to be
Yeah.
here, another opportunity to wake up, another opportunity to birth our talents or to show forth our talents and to be creators.
Yep.
Um, and that's the opportunity of every lifetime
Yeah.
is to wake up. But if you don't take that opportunity, and you might as well take it this lifetime rather than
Yeah.
another lifetime in the future. Um,
Yeah.
Soul contact is, I think a journey of an eternal being to wake up in three-dimensional consciousness is not that usual,
Hmm.
but it's more and more available because the
Yes.
information is available. It's not in mystery schools anymore. It's all around, but it's the spark
Yeah.
wanting
Yes.
or a state of grace that
Yes.
helps you birth that.
Yeah. I think before we embark on our conversation, we had talked about the state of the world, and I look at our lives as a microcosm of the world, because in my life personally, that when it got a little dark in my life, Blair, I always tell people it's in the darkness that we begin to see the Creator, the kingdom within us.
Yes,
Because when we are on automatic, we don't need that kingdom. But as it gets a little darker, and we're looking at the world on the outside of the world, I think it's an opportunity, because in my life it was when it was dark there, I began to
yes,
see the greatness within me, and I'm hoping, and from our conversation, that that's an opportunity that the collective, those that were, would get a chance to wake up, as we were talking about. It's going to take several generations, and I think is as one revelation upon the other to get us out of this um, path that we're on, because of the what's happening to the collective. And it's my hope. I'm just hoping that as a global citizen, that we began, others began to wake up, if you will, and see the greatness within them.
yeah. Well, we have to. I
Yeah,
mean, the path that we're on is a path toward darkness.
yeah,
It's a path toward um, I don't want to say destruction because I don't um, see it as destruction as much as I see it. The next 50 years are going to be difficult times.
yeah,
I mean, global warming alone and all
yeah,
of the implications of global warming. Um, and I think we're on a irreversible path in a difficult toward difficulty. If we don't begin to wake up and see that
mm-hmm.
if all of us don't do well, if all of us don't survive and thrive, none of us are going to survive and thrive. That
Yeah,
if we don't begin to put aside, if we don't begin to wake up, we don't put aside our human desires for, everything from uh, extreme comfort to domination of others on a
Yeah.
personal as well as on a national and international scale. If we continue on the path that we're on, it's going to be really, really difficult. So the
Yeah.
alternative is that a more rapid awakening process begins,
Yeah.
and that the light begins to dawn on us as civilization, as a species,
Yeah.
to begin to migrate over into five-dimensional reality while we're still in three-dimensional time and space. Um, that it's going to be very, very hard on my kids and my grandchildren. And if reincarnation is as I think it is, I'm going to be back,
Yeah.
and I'm going to be born
Yeah.
into a difficult situation of our making. Let's not do
Yeah.
that, you know?
Yeah. You were talking about, as I mentioned before, the and I had this conversation with someone, and I said it's this divisiveness keeps us apart, the creative part of us to shine. And because we are not allowing that creative part to shine, to deal with the issues that are surrounding us, global warming is one of them. Uh, we're talking about poverty and all of the other issues that are there within the human
Yes.
condition. I believe if we learn to put that aside and allow the creative aspect of us, it was the creative aspects of us that took us to the moon. It was the creative aspect of us that designed all of these technical things and all the change as we progress. My hope, Blair, is that we allow it. This spiritual awakening has to happen in order for what we were talking about, that world and that awakening. And my prayer and my hope is that it happens at a mass scale, at an increased pace to change the trajectory of where we're heading. But like you said, there's a purpose for that as well. And
Yep.
the things, there's a purpose for you moving back to be with your son, which give you the access to this house, which created the space that you're in, which gives you the
Yes.
opportunity to do all those things. So it may not look like it, but it is a ripple of one's decisions that
Right.
produces the outcome that is desired. So, talk to
That's
us,
right.
Blair, about as you finish your first book, you got 6 of them now.
Yes.
Um, how did I know how the first one came about? And you were in your process of healing and going through your journey from the loss and the pain from work, and you began to empty yourself. As you were looking at the second and the third and stuff, talk to us about your state of mind,
Yeah.
where and when you recognize yourself now. What do you see, and where are you? Um, what is your intentional progression of your life that you're trying to push forward?
Yes. Um, well, the really the first book was 2 books. One was on the subject of meditation, which is called the meditation book. But the other
Yeah.
book was a dive into the benefits of meditation. So that one's called
Mm-hmm.
the benefits, um, the amazing benefits of meditation, and the scientific
Oh yeah.
research that supports the idea
Yes.
that meditation is valuable in all areas of our lives. Mindfulness
Yeah.
is a slightly different practice from sit down meditation, which I do in the morning and in the evening. Um, I also have throughout the day mindfulness practices that I
Yeah.
do. And one of the things that I say to myself most often is peace, be still. And what I'm
Yeah.
really saying to myself is peacefulness, be, just settle into just now, the moment being, and stillness. So I'm really reminding
Yeah.
myself of who I am and to be conscious and to sort of rise up into that higher consciousness part of myself. And then I did the uh, the manifestation book. The manifestation book is what it's called. Really, as part of this whole thing of um, what is the spiritual nature of manifestation? What is the
Mm-hmm.
not how do you try and imagine a BMW appearing in your um, driveway overnight, or use
Yeah.
picture boards to try and create something, but how do you join with spirit in order to create that which you need and want for your growth and evolution?
Yeah.
um, I wrote a book of poetry. Just I just started, as I've been writing for the last 5 or 6 years. Every once in a while, I have this urge to write some poetry. So I wrote a book on spiritual poetry,
Yeah.
homage to spirit. Um, so all of that work really came out of that initial burst of creativity and the journaling that I do constantly. I'm up to about 800,000 words now in my journal. So I've got plenty of material.
Wow.
My next book is on health and wellness, and that'll come out during this
Yeah.
next year. And then the book after that is probably going to be a book on healing. So I've got
Yeah.
other works in the wings, and so I just this is just an ongoing unfolding process of writing, um, of having internal dialogue, internal realizations, and material that I can use for the books and so forth that I put out.
Anyone that has been and everyone that has been listening to our conversation, Blair, his books is, as he was talking about it, I see the path or the progression by which one embark on the conversation with yourself and how you end up to the manifestation phase of it. There's a process, guys. You have to learn how to do your meditation. You have to learn how to be mindful. And it's a totally different state that you're there when you have to learn how to be present with your thoughts. You have to learn how to engage in it. You have to learn how to talk to yourself and navigate. And then the manifestation piece also, it's a progression by which we walk. And so get all of his books. I mean, buy every single one of them because he's walking you through and where you need to be as an individual in a relationship with yourself, how to walk, meditate, talk, control your thoughts, usher your words. And I'm sure he will teach you all of those because those are pivotal piece within the conversation of self is what you say to yourself and what you release. And so buy his books. Make sure that you are getting into the podcast, the blogs, get everything that you can get your hands on from this man, because from our conversation, you can see the wisdom that resides within him while he's here on this journey. Blair, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Well, thank you very much, and I'd like to give people a free copy of my mindfulness book. Um, I can give you the link to that, or you just put it in the show notes. But be happy to share the mindfulness book with people as a way to start on your journey in relationship to meditation. Excellent. And to personal exploration. Now, would you like for me to give you that link,
Thank you.
or you just put it in the show notes?
Yeah, just send me the link and I will make sure. But usually, I will make sure that they have everything about you as far as how to contact you, the links, and all those things, and so that you can have it and they can have access to you as well.
Very good. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the
Excellent.
opportunity, and I love it.
Thank you so
Namaste.
much. I totally enjoy this, and this was, um, I learned much as well. Thank you so much.